You think your tools are safe. You trust that little check for updates pop-up. But what if that trust was betrayed from the inside? In 2025, a widely used software tool, one millions of developers open every day, became the stage for an invisible war. Not through a flashy ransomware blast, not through a stolen database dumped online. Instead, through a quiet invasion of the very mechanism we rely on to keep software safe. This is the story of how the Notepad++ update system was hijacked, and why the ripples of this attack still matter today. Imagine millions of computers across the world humdrumming along, downloading their regular updates like clockwork. Then picture a ghost in the machine, silent, hidden, feeding fake instructions under the guise of legitimacy. That's exactly what happened in Notepad++, a beloved open-source text and source code editor, first released in 2003 and still a staple in developer toolkits across industries. Notepad++ doesn't have flashy branding. It doesn't need it. It's a humble tool, simple, reliable, and trusted. It's used by hobbyists, network engineers, and enterprise developers alike. But that very trust made it a high-value target. The attack didn't come through a bug in the Notepad++ code itself. It came from beneath it, from the infrastructure that distributes updates. In software security, that's called a supply chain attack. Instead of cracking the code, the adversary twisted the delivery mechanism that tells your computer, "Hey, here's a safe update." Here's how it unfolded. In June 2025, attackers quietly gained access to the shared hosting infrastructure used to serve Notepad++ update traffic. It wasn't about breaking the code. It was about controlling the doorway, the Notepad++.org domain that millions of installations reach out to when checking for updates. At the heart of the updater is a small program called WinGup, a utility that any Windows installation of Notepad++ uses to check for new versions. WinGup asks the official server for a URL pointing to the latest release. Normally, it's a benign handshake, but in this case, that handshake was intercepted. Because the infrastructure was compromised, attackers could redirect that handshake. A targeted user would ask for the official update. Instead of getting the real link, they received a pointer to a malicious server controlled by the adversary. Their computer then downloaded and executed what it thought was a legitimate update. This wasn't a wide-open buffet. The attackers weren't spraying malware on every Notepad++ user on Earth. It was highly selective, specific organizations with strategic value, mainly in sectors like telecommunications and finance, and with links to East Asia. That's why this attack stayed hidden for months. It didn't trigger mass alarms. Compounding the problem was a design weakness in older Notepad++ versions. Prior to version 8.8.9, the updater didn't rigidly verify the digital signature of downloaded installers. That means a malicious installer looked legitimate but wasn't properly signed. WinGup would still run it. It trusted what it was told. The result? A backdoor, dubbed vaguely by some researchers, that gave attackers a foothold inside compromised machines. Once inside, they could quietly map networks, collect sensitive information, and potentially pivot deeper into a victim's systems. This wasn't opportunistic malware. This was a doorway into sensitive infrastructure. For nearly 6 months, from June until December 2nd, 2025, this compromise persisted. In early September, the hosting provider applied kernel and firmware updates that severed attackers' direct server access. But the adversaries had already stashed credentials deep within provider systems, enough to continue manipulating update traffic until December. No flashing warnings. No, your system is compromised pop-ups. Just a silent puppet master in the background, nudging legitimate-looking updates into malicious ones. Developers installing what they thought was a simple patch were unknowingly opening a backdoor. So what changed? And how do you protect yourself or your organization from something like this? First, and this is critical, update immediately to the latest Notepad++ release, version 8.8.9 and the newer version 8.9.1. These versions enforce strict certificate and signature checks on all update binaries. If an installer isn't correctly signed, the update will fail. That eliminates the attack vector used here. Second, always download directly from official sources. Relying on auto updates is convenient, but in supply chain attacks, convenience can be your enemy. Manual download from verified repositories like the official Notepad++ website or GitHub reduce exposure to redirected traffic. Third, for enterprise environments, consider centralized package management tools that validate hashes and signatures before deploying software. Don't depend on individual machines to independently pull updates from the internet. But here's the deeper lesson. This attack wasn't about sloppy software. It was about trust, about how deeply we rely on invisible infrastructure, update servers, hosting providers, distribution channels, and how a breach there can ripple through tens of millions of devices without a trace. Every defender knows the phrase trust but verify. But in software distribution, that verification has to be built into the process itself. Relying on assumptions is exactly what attackers exploit. This attack was a wake-up call. It showed that even the tools we love and use daily can become vectors for espionage if the ecosystem around them isn't hardened. It showed that the line between legitimate software and malware can be blurred by those with the skill and patience to hide in plain sight. And it reminds us, in cyberspace, the battlefield isn't always a flood of noise. Sometimes it's a whisper, a redirected line of code, quietly doing something you never asked for. If you're a developer or just someone who cares about your digital privacy, hit subscribe. We're tracking these supply chain threats as they evolve. CyFlicks, digital mysteries, real stories.